I don't know who the Proud Boys are. I mean, you'll have to give me a definition because I really don't know who they are. I can only say they have to stand down, let law enforcement do their work.
President Trump reacting today to one of the most talked about moments from last night's debate. The moment when he was asked to denounce white supremacist groups. Specifically, Joe Biden asked him about a group called the Proud Boys. The president's response was asking the Proud Boys to, quote, stand back and stand by. So who are the Proud Boys and what do they stand for? Team 12's Nyala Charles looks into that and their ties to Arizona.
The Proud Boys, an extremist group, is taking their excitement to Twitter after the president mentioned them when asked about white supremacy in last night's presidential debate.
Give me a
white
name.
supremacists and
Who would
right
you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by.
Enrique Tarrio, the group's current chairman, saying, standing by, sir, and another organizer saying, this makes me so happy. While some organizations consider the Proud Boys a hate group, the Anti-Defamation League says it falls short of that because it allows members of all races, including its leader, who is Hispanic.
To classify someone as a hate group, we have to see a number of those factors on a consistent basis.
The Southern Poverty Law Center says under President Trump, white nationalist hate groups have risen 55%. But according to Tarrio, they call themselves, quote, Western chauvinists, not white nationalists. They have a chapter in Arizona.
They are here, they're present, and from the call yesterday, if you will, that they received, we are aware that they now are on standby.
Known to wear black polos with yellow trim, they frequent public rallies and protests, believing in minimal government and maximum freedom. This video was taken of them in Portland, and they were also in Charlottesville back in 2017 when protests turned violent.
If our mere presence causes people to want to commit acts of violence, we're not afraid to defend ourselves.
Phoenix police say they're on their radar, but to their knowledge, the group hasn't been violent here. Telling 12 News, sometimes they appear at political gatherings, but we have had limited contact with them. The ADL says because of the group's recent re-energization following last night's debate, the fear is that their actions will escalate.
Their hate rhetoric, their anti-Semitic rhetoric, and hateful language will turn into something that is not only verbal harassment, but physical and will come violent.
A statement from the Arizona Proud Boys reads in part, we are in no way, shape, or form white supremacists. In Phoenix, Nyala Charles, 12 News.